On this edition of the program, Eric Adams is going independent. There are some firings that possibly could be related to Signalgate or because Laura Loomer said so. And Karol Markowicz joins us to discuss so many things that seem to have changed from the left-hand side of the aisle without any contrition as to why they had to change in the first place. That is all coming up. But we have to start with Liberation Day. This was the promised reciprocal tariff push from the White House on Wednesday after the stock market closed. We'll get to what happened this morning, but let's just go through it. This is a universal 10% tariff on all goods effective April 5th with higher rates targeting specific countries, including 34% for China, 20% for the EU, 24% for Japan, 46% for Vietnam. What the hell happened for Vietnam? Trump coming for our win back on that one. Taiwan, a 32% tariff. That is a lot of chips. In India, 26% tariff. Additionally, a 25% tariff on foreign assembled vehicles is set to take place on May 3rd. It's going to be, geez. It has been a bloodbath on Wall Street. Financial markets responding negatively to these announcements. Dow Jones fell by 1,400 points. That's approximately 3.8% of the market. S&P 4%, NASDAQ 4.5%. And major technology companies experienced significant losses. Apple and Nvidia lost a combined $470 in value. The U.S. dollar has also hit a 6-month low. Investors have expressed concerns about the potential for a global trade war leading to increased market volatility and a shift towards safer assets like gold and bonds. So I'm not an economics man. We will bring on some economics people next week to discuss a little bit of this. Politically, we'll talk about it a little bit more coming up with Karol Markowicz. But this is an all-in play for Trump. And the things that I am looking for right now are what are the vectors that would have to change for this to become what Trump's greatest critics, which are Legion, man, they're having a time right now. It's a good time to be a Trump critic. If what they say is true, and this is financial ruin for America, this is a White House engineered recession, if not depression, what are we looking for to happen? So the first thing, obviously, is the markets, right? But the markets freak out about a lot of different stuff. There's also the reality of some of these companies that are taking a beating right now. Their fundamentals haven't changed. The question is whether or not they are going to make the same amount of money that they would otherwise. So we look at the market, and then I'm going to try to figure out over the weekend, exactly what we are looking at in terms of how voters are going to look at this. The one thing I know for sure is inflation. If the price of groceries, as was described by Donald Trump yesterday, a bag with many things in it. If those many things cost many more dollars, then this is a massive problem for him. And that's why I say this is all in. Now, if those things don't happen, if the market rebounds, maybe it's not as high as it was, but it's not the bloodbath that it is right now. You take a look at some of these stocks that have gotten the crap kicked out of them, and you're like, okay, savvy investors will say, discount stocks, now's the time to buy. If it rebounds, if cost of goods doesn't significantly go up, then the question is, are there more jobs in America? I want to just take a moment right now to point out that we are living through, at least economically, something that happens probably once every 50 to 75 years in American politics, and that is a party fundamentally changes their opinion on something. The Republican Party, my entire life, in an increasingly globalized world, has supported smart people in private business to decide what rates of exchange are going to be. Free trade, it has been called, and it was identified by things like NAFTA, things like the World Trade Organization. Now, aside from Ross Perot, it was oftentimes progressive voices that rejected these organizations. They were the shareholder and investor class that was bleeding the middle class dry. And we have seen that change. Donald Trump has an economic record now that would have been lauded by progressives for my entire existence. To put on tariffs and protect union jobs, that is it's not anything that I would have ever associated with the Republican Party. And now it is. So politically, it is an interesting moment when something like that happens. Now, it might come at the cost of all of our financial futures, but we'll all find out together. We will talk more about this in the episode, but it's hard to not look at the stock market and not feel queasy. It is hard not to look at the fact that the tariff numbers that the Trump administration put out, which were calculated by the trade deficit of the United States to other countries. That's apparently why Vietnam's is so big, which doesn't exactly make sense to me. I don't really understand why everything needs to get to a 0%. Like having a trade deficit or surplus with certain countries, it doesn't seem like the end of the world. What you want to do is stop protectionism that prevents the United States from selling into some of these markets. It's hard not to look at that and not feel queasy. And we come back to where I've been on tariffs this entire time. Who's right? Every economist I've ever read in my entire life, or one small Queen's boy? All that and more. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program. I'm Justin Robert Young, joining you from Austin, Texas for our April 4th edition, tipping on 4/4s. 2025. We are, of course, emanating from Austin, Texas. And let's not waste any time. We'll talk about Eric Adams and the firings in the national security side of the White House in our update. But let's welcome in Karol Markowicz. It is always a delight and a pleasure to have on the host of the Karol Markowicz Show, the co-host of Normally and a columnist for the New York Post, the one and only Karol Markowicz. How you doing?
Hey, Justin. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, man. Well, there's a lot to get to. And I feel like what I really want to dive into is a column that you wrote about a thing that I've noticed. And that is a lot of reversals in some opinions that were very, very loudly pronounced during the last 5 years, specifically on the left. And we will get to that. But before we do, I want to point out, is listening to the Tuesday episode of your show normally, and you brought up in a conversation about Chapel Rowan talking about, none of her friends who have kids are happy.
Yeah.
That there was another column that said baby-led weaning ruined my life. And I'm here to tell you that we are currently baby-led weaning our child.
And is it ruining your life? Oh, yeah, it's fine.
You give them a little piece of avocado and they jam it in their mouths. Like they kind of, they cough a little bit, but that's fine. That's the whole point.
I don't think that was a term. I mean, I'm not, my kids aren't grown or anything. My youngest is 9, so it wasn't that long ago. But I don't even know if it was called baby-led weaning. Is that just giving them food to try?
The way that it was described to me, and I am one layer removed from the font of all knowledge when it comes to parenting, which is TikTok.
I thought your wife.
Yes, my wife. Well, no. My wife watches TikTok and then explains to me videos she's seen on TikTok. No, baby-led weaning, the difference is you are giving them larger pieces of food earlier and not dependent on purees. And you can't do both.
Is that really what it is? Wow, I really didn't know.
So yeah, and we're in the same boat here. But you can't do both, because if you do a lot of purees, then they just assume that they can swallow everything. But if you start with very large pieces, large chunks of things, then they'll just kind of gnaw on it and understand what it is.
Wow.
But yeah, I have no idea.
Right.
But
this
I will
is
say,
all new information. Although I feel like my Russian mom was like, "You're being too crazy about the purees. It's okay to give them a piece of banana." When my kids were little, so
we're
we could be going back to basics for all we know.
Exactly. Except now it's done in a TikTok video, so it's it's totally new. Although I don't know, the baby-led weaning thing. That's the thing about being a parent now. And my daughter's only 7 months. Is that you have no idea where in the canon any of this knowledge is. Is this new knowledge? Is this old knowledge? Is it repackaged? Most kids' books are trash. Like they are written terribly. There's about like 5 words that are wise. And then the rest of it is just nonsense, either repeated over and over and over again. So it's like, in a way, I actually kind of think that 3-minute TikTok videos are probably a better delivery method for a lot of this knowledge.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it could be total crank nonsense.
Who knows,
you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I'm sure the kids will be fine.
I mean, again, at the end of the day, it's like, look, my brother, who's had 2 kids before me, that they're now 5 and 8. He's like, look, if she sleeps through the night, you're doing fine. Nothing else. Like, that is ultimately you can't be doing anything wrong if they're sleeping through the night. And
that's
so far,
all you want to achieve. Right.
That's it. That's it. So I'm here to report. You can bring that back to normally. Baby-led weaning has not ruined my life. It is certainly an Instagram worthy event where she waves a gigantic piece of egg around and then eventually throws it on the ground.
I hope you're making viral TikToks of that.
We actually had to have a discussion about not posting stuff with her, because both my wife and I, at some point, I am a content creator. My wife used to be. Like, we both kind of agreed it would be a bad incentive if one of them really became popular.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, all right, now are we doing this? Is this like a thing? Like, I don't know. So we've tried to keep her, like, little Instagram stories of her doing something cute. That's fine. But silly, funny videos is something that we were like, a little hands.
It could go viral very fast.
Exactly. Because she's adorable, which is nice. All right. We will get to your column, but I'd be remiss if I did not bring up the news that has happened yesterday afternoon and this morning, and that is Liberation Day, or as I saw on a a tweet from my friend JD Durkin on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange liquidation day as stocks are taking a gigantic tumble. In my opinion, as a dispassionate observer, I kind of look at this as sort of an all-in moment for Trump, that there's, he's been very savvy about picking up a lot of 80-20 issues. The Democrats have done themselves no favors in clinging to a lot of things that aren't particularly popular, but I don't know if there's any 80-20 culture war issue that can overcome a recession that you brought on by an executive order. You are on the conservative side of the ledger. What is your opinion?
Well, I would say that I had a anti-tariff view all along, but I'm a little bit warmer to his side of the argument now. And I'll say that that's partly because I learned a lot. I didn't know that we had tariff imbalances with so many countries. And I know that the White House made a giant mistake, and they've put out what they said was tariff imbalances, but was actually trade imbalances. Which is different. And I'm curious to see if and how they clean that up. Maybe they don't. Maybe they say, well, we don't want to have a trade imbalance either, which is a tougher argument to make. Yeah. But I did not know that other countries had this many tariffs on our goods. And look, I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial writer. This is not my wheelhouse, but I've tried to educate myself as best as possible. And again, my default position would be free market, but we don't have a free market. That's not what we have. We have where other countries are imposing tariffs on our goods, and we've been sort of going along with that. So I am cautiously optimistic and waiting to see how this plays out. I think my impulse in the first Trump term would be like, this is stupid. I hate this. This is idiotic. They're a bunch of amateurs. And now, because I've learned a few things, I feel like I'm wait and see mode. And if it sucks, I'm going to say it sucks. Yeah. But if it ends up working out to everybody's surprise, I will have, maybe seen that coming.
I think the question is going to be, what is the time period that America gives wait and see mode?
This is right. Yes. Americans will not take a lot of pain in the short term for bringing manufacturing jobs back in the long term, which I don't even know necessarily why we want those jobs. But if this ends up being a pressure tactic to get countries around the world to loosen their tariffs on American goods, and it ends up really setting our economy on the right path, I could see that. I could see that outcome. I could see both outcomes. Yeah. Well, which is kind of the problem here for the markets, because the markets don't love seeing multiple outcomes.
Jazz. Yeah, they like rock solid fundamentals. Right. They do not like improv. They want to know
what to expect, and this is not that situation.
And I think it is the instability, and I don't think that we're done with the instability. The difference for the Trump administration is, I think, part of the reason why they don't even necessarily, I don't think that they're going to clean up those numbers, is because they do want to have the White House switchboard light up like a telethon, and this be a like, all right, now we're renegotiating deals, or there's going to be some sort of X, Y, and Z. I would say for the Trump administration, they better hope this is the high point of the chaos, because I don't know if like there's much more, you got to swallow this pill stuff that they have room to do. They better hope that the next few big announcements are, well, we've talked to Brussels, and we've talked to London, and we've talked to Tokyo, and now we are going to have these different relationships. The argument that if I'm going to steelman it, that I kind of feel the Trump administration could have gone more in this direction is what you mentioned, where it's like, whenever he's talking about free trade, we don't have free trade.
Right. Like we don't have free trade.
If you are a free trade advocate, you can quibble on the methods to get there. And you can say, well, maybe we should be harder on the World Trade Organization, or maybe we should do X, Y, and Z. And tariffs are a bad idea. But if that is the goal, is to eliminate trade barriers, which is the point of free trade, then this is a method for which to get there. They haven't really said that, but I also don't think that that's not the people. They're not talking to people that are worried right now. They are talking to people that are like, they don't own stocks. They don't care about the stock market at all. It can be all blood red there and have a bunch of people running around screaming. They're like, I don't know, maybe I'll have a better job in a few months. Like that's what they care about. Now, if it starts to hit the grocery store, if it starts to hit the gas pump, now you're in a real pickle when it comes to stuff like that. So we will see. So right now you are wait and see.
Wait and see, because look, if you take a strong position one way or the other, the Trump administration is not like any other presidential administration. They are not tied to the ideals of their political party. They are not like, we have to be like this. We could be like anything. And so you're risking a complete shift in the next day or two. And what you said makes no difference anymore. And Mary Catherine, him and I really talk about whether to cover stuff like this on our show, because it does switch so fast. That first tariff announcement where it was going to be tariffs for Canada and Mexico, we were like, let's hold off on this. And literally hours later, it was reversed.
It was pulled back.
So when you record a show even one day in advance with the Trump administration, you're taking a lot of risks.
Trust me. There's so many episodes where I'm like, oh God, do I just look like a total idiot and these are like interviews too. It's like you have to do I feel like there is like a Trump preamble that I've had to put in of just hey guys, this is recorded 2 days ago. We don't talk about, if you think we're going to talk about this, we don't talk about this. Here's my opinion. Anyway, here's the interview. Well, speaking about opinions that have changed dramatically. You wrote in the New York Post that there seems to be a memory holding from some folks on the left of opinions that they have taken over the last 5 years, specifically regarding COVID and woke culture. I know that you have a few of these folks that are just kind of mascots of it, but lay out your argument.
Well, I didn't even mention the Gavin Newsom one in my column because my editor was like, it's already, a few days past that. And there's been so many new examples. But Gavin Newsom saying, whoever used Latinx, I never even heard that. And then CNN does a role of him just using Latinx. And obviously it was him. Obviously he's exactly the kind of guy who put Latinx into our, lexicon. So there's a lot of examples like that. We obviously had Congressman Gill go after NPR head Catherine Mayer. She acted as if she never heard these crazy thoughts ever before. Like, who would be for reparations? What a ridiculous thing to say. And it was glorious because she tweeted in 2020 that she took a day off to read an essay on reparations. And then when Congressman Gill asked her about it, she behaved as if, first of all, what an insane thing to do or say or think. And she had no recollection of the book that the essay came from, even though she was, saying that she was taking a day off to really, really read that and really process it. And that's the thing. The last 5 years have been a bunch of, and that forced on the rest of us through, cancel culture. It really was leftism collided with cancel culture to pressure us to believe and say insane things. And now they're pretending like not only were they not the ones pressuring us, but that who would believe such a thing? Who could possibly think this?
If I can go back to the NPR CEO for a second, that moment, it reminded me of the scene in Austin Powers when he's being given all of his stuff back from being unfrozen. And it's like, and here's your Swedish made penis enlarger pump. And it's like, oh, that's not mine. And here's the book, Swedish made penis enlarger pumps and me. Yes, that is my bag, baby. And it was just when he goes like, oh, are you for, do you believe that America is addicted to black plunder and white
supremacy?
Democracy?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, she's like, what? No. Oh, what an awful thing to say. Here's your tweet. I very much believe it was almost, I mean, it was comical. But I think
how have you not cut up the Austin Powers? I haven't heard anybody else mention that. You should definitely have that. We should throw that in.
This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. If you're curious, my breakdown of the special elections that happened on Tuesday in Florida and in Wisconsin, I went into tremendous detail on them and specifically compared the turnouts and percentages, not just to 2024 with Donald Trump, because I do think that that's a bit of a ambitious metric. Not many people run as popular as Donald Trump. And some of the candidates involved in those races are, they had their own issues. But if you want my breakdown on that, it's on our last Substack exclusive episode. You get 2 of them each and every week. And sometimes the news falls with those episodes. So go ahead and get involved. Join the team. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $12 a month, $3 a week. If you'd buy me a cup of coffee once a week, then treat yourself. Treat yourself to 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And then we have the $99 option for the entire year. You know, we would be past some of we'd be getting right into the primary season by the time that you next have to think about supporting the show. And in the meantime, 12 months of every single week, all of your political needs covered. Oh, I'm a giver. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's get to some of the stories we didn't have a chance to get to. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has announced his decision to withdraw from the Democratic primary and seek re-election as an independent candidate. This move follows recent dismissal of the federal bribery charges against him, which he claimed had hindered his ability to campaign effectively within the Democratic framework. Adams emphasized his commitment to transcending partisan divides, stating that the city requires leadership focused on the common middle. Despite running as an independent, he affirmed his identity as a Democrat. The mayor faces, of course, significant challenges, including a low approval rating of 20% and limited campaign resources. Polling data indicates that he trails behind Democratic contenders such as former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, as well as Comptroller Brad Lander. Critics have questioned Adams' political alliances, particularly his perceived closeness with President Donald Trump, following the abrupt dismissal of the charges against him. To qualify for the general election ballot, Adams must gather approximately 3,750 signatures. He's also exploring avenues to access public campaign funds. So this kind of takes the heat out of a hot kitchen when it comes to that New York primary, which is usually where New York City determines who its next mayor is. It's in the Democratic primary. If there's going to be a challenge, it's going to happen there. And with ranked choice voting, a lot of different things can happen as other candidates fall out. But Adams had been melting in the polling in the Democratic side. You know, I think his best hope would be that New York continues to do well. He continues to use his perch from, Gracie Mansion to be seen as a strong leader. But I don't think that that's going to be the case. Eric Adams is not a stability guy. Weirdly, the stability argument comes from Cuomo, who was disgraced and banished to the Me Too shadow realm and now has reemerged, like so many other figures that kind of went away during the cancel culture era. I don't know whether or not this affects my trip to New York City. I'll be curious your guys' opinion. Send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Do you still think I should go cover this race? Because the exciting part about the race was going to be Cuomo versus Adams. And if there's no Cuomo versus Adams, and it's just Cuomo versus Zohran Mamdani, who is a socialist, and I don't mean that in a pejorative, that is like his description of his own policies. It's not quite as exciting to me. It's not quite as thrilling. Now, maybe That means we should go there in November. But I don't know. I will answer your beck and call, friends. The White House has fired several National Security Council staffers following a controversial meeting between President Trump and far-right activist Laura Loomer, who reportedly advised Trump on personnel decisions. Loomer's Oval Office meeting included top officials such as Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Vice President J.D. Vance, Personnel Head Sergio Gore, and Representative Scott Perry. Loomer, known for her colorful online persona, which includes spreading any rumor that might pass through the mind of Loomer, is certainly a controversial figure, even amongst the MAGA faithful. While the exact reasons for the firing are unclear, they coincide with concerns over NSC's communication practices under National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, particularly staffers using the Signal messaging app for sensitive discussion. Waltz has recently had to defend his team's practices to Trump and senior White House officials. These developments mirror Trump's earlier purge of 150 NSC employees after his inauguration. So the Loomer details came out because of Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan of the New York Times. So this is feeling a lot more 45 than it is feeling what we had known of 47 in terms of the internal leaking apparatus. Because how does Maggie Haberman find out about this? Maggie Haberman finds out about Laura Loomer being in the White House because the people that are mad at these people being fired want to discredit the reason why they were fired. So regardless of what Laura Loomer said, the way that I would look at this is I'm going to take a wild guess and say that these guys wouldn't have been fired if it weren't for Signalgate. So you could look at this as Donald Trump firing people because of Signalgate. The Laura Loomer stuff kind of puts the stink over a lot of different stuff because she is a controversial figure. And I'll put it this way. The more that Donald Trump takes cues from Laura Loomer, the less I will feel comfortable. I don't find her to be a particularly deep investigative thinker. Probably be the nice way to put it. But then on the other hand, if you're like, hey, Signalgate is totally embarrassing, somebody's got to fall on the sword for something that humiliating. 3 people in the National Security Council got fired. Okay. I mean, it'd be nice to know if they were the people that added Jeffrey Goldberg to the Signal chat, but who knows? Senate Republicans, led by Budget Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham, unveiled a 70-page budget resolution aimed at advancing key components of President Trump's legislative agenda. The proposal includes a $5 trillion increase to the national debt ceiling to prevent a potential financial default and seeks to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent. The plan allocates $150 billion in additional defense spending over the next decades and provides $175 billion for enhanced border security and immigration enforcement. Senate Majority Leader John Thune emphasized that the legislation would facilitate generational investment in national defense, border security, and energy sector. To expedite the legislative process to avoid a filibuster, Republicans intend to use budget reconciliation, allowing passage with a simple majority. However, this approach has sparked intra-party disagreements, particularly with the House Republicans who favor more substantial spending cuts. Representative Ralph Norman expressed opposition to the Senate's proposed debt ceiling increase and called for at least $2 trillion in spending reductions. Democrats have criticized the proposal, arguing that it would lead to significant cuts in vital programs and disproportionately benefit the wealthy. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer contended that the plan would gut vital programs, throw Americans off Medicaid, and give massive tax breaks to billionaires. The budget resolution sets a May 9th deadline for various Senate committees to finalize their portions of the package, aiming for swift advancements of President Trump's policy objectives. So, I know for a fact that there are meetings throughout the Republican conference, as it were, both in the House and the Senate and the White House, on what they're going to do with this. Here's my opinion. Somebody involved is going to have to eat a crap sandwich. There's no way that you can do something this big with this fragile of a coalition, which now in the House is up to 7, right? So there's more because now Elise Stefanik's not leaving. They don't have to worry about her special election. And you have the 2 Republican congressmen from Florida. So now you're back up to full mast, as it were. But the reason why it has to be one bill is somebody's got to eat it. Either someone's going to have to eat it on the border stuff or someone's going to have to eat it on the spending stuff. What's going to complicate this is where the economy is. You saw a little bit of heartbeat from opposition to Trump in the Senate over the last 48 hours as a Democratic authored bill by Tim Kaine rebuking Trump's tariffs against Canada. That garnered the support of the 3 opposition voices amongst the Republican conference, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell, and also Rand Paul. So that's going to pass the Senate. It's going to go nowhere in the House, but it's going to pass the Senate. You've also seen Chuck Grassley, who is about as stalwart a Republican as you're going to get. He introduced a bill that said the Senate needs to claw back its tariff authorities. A lot of eyes on this economy. A lot of eyes. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you want to support this show. And now, back to Karol. I think the heart of your argument is that it's not that these people are coming to a side that you more agree with, that yes, we should say identifying Latinx is stupid when the people that actually speak Spanish don't ever want to do it. And it was 7 academics that decided that. Yes, we should believe that the CEO of NPR should think that black plunder is not something that America is addicted to. Your issue is that there's no moment of contrition and there's no moment hey, I evolved. Yes, I did say that. And here's where I have evolved.
That's absolutely part of it, that there hasn't been any accountability for any of this. Also in my column, obviously my favorite punching bag, Randy Weingarten, is now saying that she was one of the people who wanted to open schools the whole time during the pandemic. And I just wrote column after column after column how any area where she had any amount of influence kept schools closed. Any area where the politicians double middle fingered her and said, get out of our faces, open schools. That's not a coincidence. That is her pressure to keep schools closed. And of course, the fact that she was allowed by the Biden administration to rewrite CDC policy to keep schools closed even longer. Now she's like, I was an open schools champion. It's not just that there's no contrition. It's this pretense that they were right all along. I mean, to get an apology seems impossible, right? But this no accountability, and I believe this the whole time. I can't let that pass.
The other 2 are funny examples because I don't know exactly. I mean, unless you're deeply, deeply invested in public broadcasting, wherever NPR goes is mostly on the right, an issue of tax dollars, and California is its own issue. If you don't live there, then Gavin Newsom's mostly a punching bag. For now. I mean, he's going to be our national problem very soon.
We
can get to him in a second. Because that's all right. We'll do Gavin real quick before we get to Randy. Gavin's pivot is by far the funniest because he is, without a doubt, the most sociopathic politician that I think, exists. And so the idea, of course, he's the one to be like, no, I'm the center of the road guy. I've always been that. It's like, you are a coal-eyed sociopath that can look somebody in the eyes and just be like, no, absolutely not. Yeah, no, I wasn't the guy that I was 5 seconds ago,
right?
Very loudly.
Yeah. Catherine Maher was like, that was half a decade ago. I'm like, that's just 5 years. It's not half a century. It's 5 years ago. And you're in your 40s. You're not a teenager. You're not even in your 20s. It's like, come on. Half a decade ago, you believe the same stuff you believe now. But Gavin Newsom, you're right. His drastic change. I mean, he went on Bill Maher, and Bill is like, telling him to run for president. Bill Maher talks about how California is in the toilet all the time. How is he now saying run for president? Has it really been that fast that he was able to say, oh, I think boys and girls sports is unfair, and that's it? He gets to have a pass on the fact that he was the one who pushed all of these bad ideas on the rest of us? Like, it just makes no sense to me.
Well, it's like they're in session in California right now for their state senate. And it's like, all right, if you really kind of feel this, then where is there any backing? Absolutely not. Nothing has kind of changed. And it's really been interesting to look at the announcements for California's, Democratic challengers for the governor there, because they all have to say they're running outsider campaigns and we're going to change Sacramento.
Right.
But they can't say why. Yeah. They can't say,
or who did
I'm going to reverse the failure of the Newsom administration. And we've been off course. It's just like, I think Xavier Becerra, his announcement yesterday was like, these are tough times.
Yeah.
And California's been through tough times before. And it's like, it's that meme of like the goose chasing the guy. It's like, why are they tough? Why are they tough?
Yes. I was thinking about is it Spider-Man where they're all like pointing at each other?
Yeah. Because look, California's a one-party state, and any, and there's been plenty of them on the Republican ledger where you've had united Republican power and the state hasn't been run well, and they should be punished for it. And it's hard in states where there is no opposition party that it's harder to shake things up. But that's kind of more incumbent on the internal party politics to say, hey, look, I'm a different kind of whatever party's in charge. And that doesn't seem to be happening. I mean, Katie Porter ran on like, I'm going to run against Donald Trump to solve California's problems. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. Well, it's the whole, abundance Democrat thing that's popular right now. This Ezra Klein book, these Democrats are like, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a typical Democrat. I'm an abundance Democrat. And I'm like, that's just a Republican. You're just a Republican.
What's so funny about that is like, I feel like this is a social experiment. This is Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson doing a social experiment that if they just end all of their sentences in an NPR uptick, can you just read an article from Reason and have it be the most influential book in Democratic politics?
That is so perfect. Yes.
Because it's like,
you got to say, can you read an article from Reason and have it be the most influential book in Democratic politics?
Yeah, exactly. Me and Derek Thompson endeavored to find out. And so we wrote Abundance. Copy C, copy V. It's the same. I mean, like, I've been reading about like the California high-speed rail debacle for years. Right. And now it's like, I think on one hand, it is very interesting that there is a fever breaking on the Democratic side where it's like, hey, what would it be like if our promises were kept? Which I think from the conservative perspective would be, what would it be like if you made coherent promises and then didn't just get everybody paid by, staffing it with graft? Like that would be the next level. But at least there's one side of it of like, hey, if we spend several $billions, should we have a high speed rail by it now? Like that's a good question to ask. A very good question to ask.
And where did that money go? But Jon Stewart discovering that any of this goes on, like. People used to get their news from Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. All these young people were like, I get my news from The Daily Show. That guy's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. He like literally knows nothing.
Well, and that's the thing that I think is kind of endemic in politics in general, but it is more specific to the left of if it's named the right thing, then it is the right thing. The naming convention. So it's like when Jon Stewart is freaking out because Ezra Klein is walking him. We haven't seen this clip. This is Ezra Klein on Jon Stewart's podcast, walking him through all of the steps that you needed to go through to be a contractor to lay broadband, right?
Which I just want to say, anybody listening to politics knows all the steps. Any average listener of this show is not going to be surprised by all the steps that the Biden administration made people take to get broadband. It's not going to be a shock. But
the thing that's kind of lost in that argument is that if a conservative did that exact thing, and they were on Fox News, and it was Greg Gutfeld who did the exact same bit, right? And was reading all of the same things. The response from the left automatically would be, yes, that's because we need to keep things safe. That's because we care. There's care and diligence. Yes, it takes steps to make these programs work, but that's the way that we know that, we can make sure that we spend money the right way. And if there is some kind of Overton window shifting to be like, hey, money goes in machine, do results come out?
Right.
Then that's good. I think that is a good thing. It is just hilarious to me that this is chapter and verse from, conservative and libertarian people. And it's just because it falls out of Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson's mouths. There's just this entire class of Democrat who's like, whoa, why did nobody say this before?
Yeah, how come nobody told us? In the only outlets that we read or media news that we follow, why is this such a surprise to us? Yeah, I mean, you said, if you name the act the right thing. I just want to say that, last time I was on your show, we were talking about Florida Republicans. Dealing with big sugar and wanting to give them a soft immigration deal. And they called that act the Trump Act.
The Trump Act.
And so, yes. Yeah. But it was defeated. Floridians rose up and really forced them to make a deal with Ron DeSantis. And he ended up winning that exchange. So you're totally right that you put the right name on it. And often the voters will just go for it. But I feel like people are getting savvier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the general political follower is going to be a little bit more savvy because information's so much more free on it. And there's enough of a sense of like how the game is played that people have an ability to do it. I want to go back to Randy Weingarten because we lost that thread, and I do want to pick it up because while the Abundance Boys and Gavin Newsom and Catherine Marr are like trivial, I know that Randy Weingarten, for people like you who wound up moving states in large part because of the education of your children and the outsized influence that the teachers union has, she is not a funny character. She is somebody that, like, for certain parents, they would want like Liam Neeson level skills to take her out, like based on the damage that they have done to their kids. I think with her, I would wonder, even from the left, is it a fresh face? Like why would you want the same person to be delivering this message? Like, even if you care deeply about teachers unions and you care deeply about the collective action that they could take,
right?
Why on earth would you want a politically toxic person at the top of your organization?
Right. Well, but you don't see them moving to get rid of her. You don't see them moving away from her. So until that happens, I can't trust any of these changes. And I don't know if you saw, but Chris Kaliza, am I saying his name right? He was quoting Rahm Emanuel, who said Democrats.
Oh, Chris Cillizza, yes.
Cillizza, yeah. He said that Rahm Emanuel, he quoted him saying that Democrats should just say to parents, "I'm sorry, we made a mistake about the school closures over the years." And
I think in very Rahm Emanuel fashion, it was the F word that we effed up. Yeah, like
yes, right.
And I think that's probably would be a start.
Right. But how could they do that and maintain their relationship with Randi Weingarten? She made them do that. She forced them into it. I like to remember that in the early days of the pandemic, Bill de Blasio, who I despised as mayor of New York City, like I'd see him around my neighborhood and I'd scowl in his direction. I really didn't like him. He was terrible for the city in every way, but I have to give him credit because he said, if we close schools, it's going to be really hard to reopen them, because he knew the power and control that these unions have. And they ended up closing schools a few more times. And it really is a boondoggle that the Democrats can't seem to get themselves out of until they can get rid of Randi Weingarten and that influence that these unions have over the Democratic Party. I'm sorry, it doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing.
It's just hard to think that you can, for some parents, come back from what happened, right? But although on the other side, that might be a part of the calculus, is that you're only the parent of school age kids for so long. And then eventually you care less about Randi. I mean, you might always hate her, but she doesn't affect your day-to-day life. The thing that I would find to be very puzzling is, like, I don't know of anybody, including Randi Weingarten right now, who would approve of Randi Weingarten's actions during the pandemic. And so it's like, it's not the end of the world. You can still be involved in the organization, but like, just for the
good of your cause, really.
For the good of your cause. Why are you there? People don't trust you. You were under pressure to make decisions and you made the wrong decisions. So if you are in another situation that has that kind of heft to it, why would anyone assume that you're going to make the right decisions?
Right. That's it. And we say the wrong decisions as if like it was, just a mistake. I just don't feel like with her, it was a mistake. I get that. Okay. I actually give a lot of grace for people who believe schools should stay closed until summer 2020. Once fall 2020 hit and you still wanted schools closed, I have my drop off rate of that grace is very, very steep. But she wanted schools closed the following year also, summer 2021. She's like, well, I don't know if we could open schools in the fall. We'll see what kind of money I get. That is just, to me, that's such evil. And I feel the same way about Anthony Fauci. For a while there, I was like, oh, he's just really bad at his job. He's just incompetent. But then when he's pushing Biden's spending plan in order to open schools in winter of 2021, he's saying we need to pass Biden's spending plan in order to open schools. It's no longer incompetency. It actually is evil to me.
The Fauci thing, I remember during the pandemic, Fauci was very highly regarded and people were talking about, it's like, oh, well, one of the best experts on a lot of this kind of stuff. And I thought, especially in the early going, I'm like, as like a mascot to tell people to wash their hands more, like he's a kindly Italian man. He has a soothing voice. I can get it. And then I forget where I first saw it, but it was like one of those protests from the 90s, like the early 90s with like the gay activists. And it's just like Fauci must die and like blood on it. And I'm like, wow.
Right.
People were really mad at Anthony Fauci. I wonder what happened. And then it's like,
like, oh,
it's like, oh, gotcha. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 90s gay activists. I were not familiar with your game. Like that is I get it more now. I very much understand that he's
I
not
gave
a
him the
character
benefit
that
of the
you
doubt.
like the more you spend with him.
Right. I gave him the benefit of the doubt for a long time. And again, I was just like, oh, he's just really bad at his job. He's just really bad at telling people what they need to be doing at a time when we really need somebody good at telling people what they need to be doing. He just changes his mind frequently. He doesn't correct anything. He's just like says whatever. Every day is a new adventure with this guy. And I would, kind of point out where he kept changing his mind on things. And he'd be like, the science is evolving. And I'd be like, what? What science?
What
where?
science?
Why? Right. Where is this data? Where is this new data that you're the only person privy to?
And then he would just admit it. He was just like, yes, I lied about the limits of vaccination just because I figured I could get another few points. And it's like, really? Like you just there's no, I mean, this is like us with the markets. It's like, no, with this we don't need jazz. We don't need wherever you're going. We need chapter and verse. We need biblical truth.
Yeah. One of not to get too far off base here, but I could talk about COVID insanity forever. But one of my absolute favorite or, despised Anthony Fauci lines was when he said, as we've been saying all along, people don't need masks outside. And he had literally never said that before, like ever. As we've been saying all along, that was the first time he ever said it. So. Yeah.
I almost wonder whether or not part of that is just knowing that you're not going to get blistered for it.
Right.
And I think that part of that is with the Trump administration now, where it's like, I think we're segmented so much that there are elements of Trump world that just don't care. They're just going to say whatever they want. And it's going to be celebrated by the people that they know that is going to celebrate them. That it's going to be hated by people that they know are going to hate them, but they're going to be able to retweet those guys and be like, ha, I made these people mad. And on some level, I do think that there's a corrosive element of like, hey, wait a minute. Like, is there somebody on the MAGA right that's going to be like, hey, when do we know if these tariffs are bad? Even if you believe in tariffs, even if you believe that this is the right thing.
Right.
When is there an accounting for us to say like, all right, maybe 40% to the European Union was bad. Maybe it should have been 25 or something like that. And it's soft there. And it's porous on the left where there's nobody, theoretically, the controllers of the mass media, nobody was going to step up and say, hey, Fauci, you're just making stuff up. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And even now they only will, admit it in like small doses in retrospect. But about the MAGA right, I think that they won't be able to ignore if things get bad on a Main Street level.
Yeah.
The stock market tanking is actually not going to be, I think, as big a deal as prices going up at the stores. I think that is where the rubber will really meet the road. Again, should this even go on that long? I don't know. By the time this airs, this could all be over.
I've talked to every country and we've decided it's great.
Yeah. The one with the only penguins on it. I feel like they're going to have their tariffs last a little longer, but everybody else, I don't know. It could all be over soon.
I would not be able to let you off the show without discussing Florida politics. We already touched on it a little bit. Byron Donalds has announced his run for governor. Yeah. It does appear that, you're seeing a lot more Casey DeSantis at these events. She's speaking earlier and earlier in more prominently in all of the programs. Do you think she's going to run? I
don't know. I really don't know. And here's why. Yes, she is being kind of positioned. And so, yes, obviously it looks like it's going to happen, but it's getting late in the game. And I know a lot of people who love Ron DeSantis, who would be Casey DeSantis supporters, who are already donors to Byron Donalds. I don't know how much longer they can do this. Will she or won't she? If she's actually going to do it. So I don't know. Maybe it's a red herring. Maybe it's supposed to be kind of putting the fear into Byron Donalds. I mean, obviously the kind of some of the better moments are when Casey DeSantis is golfing with Donald Trump shortly after he endorsed Donald. And Donald Trump also he's done the coveted like double endorsement in some races in the past.
He has.
You just really never know what he's going to do. I obviously am a big fan of the DeSantises, and I don't know. I just don't know that you can be like, and now my wife runs. I don't know. I would love to change all the rules and keep Ron DeSantis for another 5 terms. Like I'm very worried about what happens to Florida after him. It turns out the Florida legislature is just a bunch of, I don't even know what to call them, but it's scary to watch them in action. They are really in the pockets of various business interests in a way that I've never seen so blatantly before. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You can't
and
unsee it.
It's crazy. I've never seen it so obvious before.
Florida is a young state, like in terms of its industry, in terms of it being a powerful state. It really continues to be driven by the industries that made it like that. And it's I think it's going to be a pretty long time before you see that there is something that is as independent. What has been fascinating to see, especially through your lens as a newcomer to Florida, is that like you really saw, one of my favorite adages on this show is that all power is future power in politics. So like the day that you are not going to run for reelection or your term limited, your calls stop getting answered. And you've seen that with the Florida legislature, because in the term before DeSantis was going to romp and get reelected, yes, sir. No, sir.
All the time.
You want me to jump? How high? Sure. An abortion restriction. We'll do it. Doesn't matter. Like even people from South Florida where we're going to get punished for it. Who cares? We're on board with everything. And then the second that he can't run again and it doesn't look like it's going to be one of his loyalists, it's like, I don't know. Maybe, like, are you that popular? Who knows?
But he is massively popular is the thing that I think a lot of these people are misunderstanding. And they also just feel like Trump can give them cover, and Trump's not giving them that cover. He did not, they tried to push through that, weak immigration bill. They called it the Trump Act. They thought he was going to step up and go to bat for them. And Trump was like, what Trump Act? He did not say one word about it. So I think they're misplaying their hand a little bit. I don't know what will happen in the next few years with these people being primaried. I'm excited for some of these primaries to happen because I think that they're impossibly weak for a state as red as Florida. But we'll see. I mean, look what just happened with Randy Fine. He, underperformed, obviously, going into Congress, deeply disliked. I mean, his little war with Ron DeSantis is just made him wildly unpopular here. And he had Trump's endorsement, and it still was a tough race for him. They needed to have Trump virtual rallies in the last few days in red state, deep red counties. And I think these people should be more worried than they are about their jobs. I don't think Floridians are going to take it. And again, the thing is, the last thing I'm going to say, I could talk about this forever too. The people who moved here in the last 5 years are so passionate about kind of the mission of Ron DeSantis, Florida. It's not just going to go away. Like, we moved here to be part of something. It felt very revolutionary. And I don't think people are going to just say, oh, okay, I'll just have a regular old Republican now that I've had Ron DeSantis. I think it's going to be tougher for them to just adapt to that.
It's interesting because I certainly feel part of that myself, having moved from California to Texas, the other great migration route. Aside from New York, aside from New York to Florida, it was California to Texas. And, the thought when it was happening was like, oh, a bunch of these liberals are moving from this liberal area to this, redder area, blah, 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 blah. And, I don't know exactly what the difference is between the Bay Area and Austin. Austin's still a very liberal city and a very red state. But there is a sense of, I don't want to go back to where I came from.
For sure.
Even if it's just basic governmental competence and response, the difference between California and Texas has been night and day. From my perspective,
absolutely.
Like just the less that I pay in, I don't pay estate tax. Yes, I pay property tax, which is a different thing. But like, there's a response to problems that even if it's slower than I might like, it at least exists.
Yeah. I never lived anywhere where it existed before. So it's been a real eye-opener.
Problems just pile up and you're just like, okay, is anyone going to take it on? It's like, no, we're going to commit to justice. And it's like, what does that mean? Never mind. Moving on.
Your problems are fine. It's fine.
Exactly. We're going to have a program that's named the appropriate name. The problems are fine. Yeah, exactly.
The problems are fine.
I wonder whether or not, Ron DeSantis is obviously still very, very popular. Whether or not Casey DeSantis runs is going to be interesting. Whether or not she looks to stay in government on some level. It has been interesting to see that she is certainly over the last 2 years, much less Jackie Kennedy, and now she's more ponytail, quarter zip, like a politician. But there's, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating because I don't view Byron Donalds as somebody who is the deep in the spreadsheets kind of guy.
This is the thing. Yeah.
That
I like
DeSantis
Byron.
is.
Yeah. I like him. I just don't know that he's going to even enjoy this kind of job. It is a in the weeds kind of position that I hope to be wrong. I hope he gets in there and he loves going through all the details that make a state hum, but I'm just not sure.
Yeah. And there are some big problems. I mean, like DeSantis has not been able to put a dent in some of the property, the insurance, stuff that's happening down there. There are like big ticking time bombs that need to be dealt with. And, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
But plenty of time for us to go over the Florida
we could do it
governor's
again.
race, which I'm sure that we will many times between now and Election Day with Karol Markowicz. Is there one central place where people can find you?
It's just at Karol with a K on X, Karol, my full Twitter handle, X handle.
That's a great. How early were you on Twitter to get just
not that
Karol?
Early? It
really?
Used to be that you could email Twitter and they would respond. So in those days, I emailed them and said, "Hey, the person who has this handle doesn't use it. Can I have it?" And they're like, "Sure, here." And it was like, yeah, imagine you could just email them and ask them for something and they just did it. It was nice.
That's how I first got my blue check. I just emailed them and I said, "Hey,
right.
I'm a part of the press. I do podcasts." And
they're like, done.
Took a picture of my ID on a bar, and then I had a blue check like 2 days later.
That's it. Yeah, bring back those days.
Bring them back. All right, Karol, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. TheYoungAmerican@gmail.com. Should I go to New York? Should I still go up to New York for the Democratic primary? Let me know. Maybe I'll switch to Jersey. Jersey is apparently going to be an interesting race. I don't know. The races this year... Like, I'm going to do my best, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to tell you that races are close when they're not close. But, like, I don't think Winsome Earl Sears has a great path in Virginia now. She doesn't seem like she has found her voice to stretch the by and large popular reign of Glenn Youngkin. And meanwhile, you have Abigail Spanberger, who is running a very focused race for the Democrats, centered around the idea that a bunch of Virginians who used to work for the federal government now are out of work. And then the Democratic primary isn't what it used to be. I don't know. Maybe Jersey. Maybe I go back to Jersey, to my old hometown of Hoboken. Love Hoboken. Anyway, email me, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us with a one-time donation, it is paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Of course, you can only get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. If you are on the team, if you are paying for the program, that is $3 a week. Billed 12 monthly. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. I mean, come on. It's a great deal. We have our annual plan. Even better deal. Save more money. But the only way that you get your name read at the end of the show is by getting on our Titanic founding tier, including these fine folks: L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah, Jeremy, pro idiot, chiller tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York. Will, the Borge, B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria Young, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Stephen, and Zombie Doc. If you want your name read on the show, one place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. We'll be back next week. We got a word out for guests, but we will be economically minded. Might have to just blow out a big ol' economic megapod next week. But anyway, that'll be next week. Till then, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.